Hi, I'm Allie.
And I'm Becky.
We are registered dietitians that are passionate about functional approaches to whole body health.
In this video, we are going to be talking about leptin, what it is, why it matters, and how you might want to adjust your diet according to where your leptin level is.
Leptin is a hormone that plays a huge role with energy balance in the body. Ultimately, it tells your body if you're satiated or fed, or if it's time to eat again. So a huge influence of leptin is going to be on hunger and satiety. Leptin in the Greek language, leptos, actually refers to as thin. So it plays a huge role on metabolic health and achieving an ideal body weight. What's more is that leptin actually can cross the blood-brain barrier and dock to our hypothalamus. That's the part of the brain that starts the feedback mechanism of our HPA axis or whether we're in fight or flight mode or that regulatory rest digest mode. What's more is beyond leptin serving as a safety signal to that stress response, we have leptin receptors throughout the body. We actually have leptin receptors on our ovaries, on our thyroid, regulating our bone mass, and so much more.
Yes, and we know that a keto diet, which is typically going to be a high-fat diet, can have a favorable effect on our leptin levels, driving more of that satiety, reducing anxiety, favorably affecting hormone balance, and so much more. So I want to unpack a little bit more the keto-leptin connection.
Yes, so leptin levels are influenced, like you said, Becky, by fat. So when we're doing a ketogenic diet, it's often a high-fat diet. So consuming more dietary fat is going to elevate leptin levels. What's more is many individuals in a ketogenic diet are also calorie restricted or practicing intermittent fasting. In this space, their body is actually cleaving from their own adipocytes or body fat cells to liberate fat into the bloodstream and also favorably impact that leptin. So we can see leptin docking to all of those various receptors in the body, supporting that keto high of anti-inflammatory effects, like you said, maybe more grounded mood or less anxiety, and satiety. That's where a lot of individuals on the ketogenic diet kind of lose their appetite or forget about hunger and regulate cravings. What's more is the mechanism of keto with epilepsy is further supported by that leptin level, because we see that leptin levels directly reduce excitatory neurotransmitters, and not only will that reduce seizures, but it also harnesses that fight or flight stress response.
Well, the good news is you can actually measure it in your blood. And for some individuals, either starting out on a keto diet, or maybe you've been doing keto for a while and all of a sudden it's not working the same. You're not getting that keto high, or you used to be satiated and now you're finding you're hungry after every meal. It would be a good idea to have your leptin level assessed.
Yes, leptin levels would even be appropriate for you to run if not on the keto diet, if dealing with infertility or hormonal imbalance, chronic fatigue syndrome, or energy stability doesn't feel right, or chronic hunger, as well as that stress anxiety connection. The reference range for leptin is quite broad, going from 4.7 to 23.7 for a ideal range, but in the functional medicine space, we like to narrow that out. In fact, I like to see my patients between a 5 to a 15, and I'm gonna strategically adjust their food frequency or whether or not they're fasting, as well as their amount of grams of fat based on the information that I see.
Yes, and we really can see issues at both ends of the spectrum, either leptin that's way too high or leptin that's way too low. Let's unpack that a little bit.
Most definitely. So we often see leptin levels trending with insulin resistance. So if you are someone that knows that you're insulin resistant or has elevated levels of insulin, or you have elevated levels of blood sugar, maybe you've been told that you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, we would probably hypothesize that you're running actually elevated or high leptin as well. And if leptin levels are too high, just like insulin resistance, you're starting to see leptin resistance. So unfortunately, you're not going to get that satiety signaling, and the body's going to perpetually maintain hunger. We're also not going to get that grounding, stress reduction effect. So when we look at individuals that are candidates for high leptin levels, they would often have excessive body fat or be overweight. They're often going to have insulin resistance or elevated blood sugar levels. We can also see those that are waking in the middle of the night because leptin is actually supposed to maintain elevation while you sleep. So if you're waking up in the middle of the night or you're a nighttime snacker or really just frequently grazing or feeling unsatisfied at mealtime, you're not having that leptin docking and likely you're in a status of excess leptin levels. We can also see fatigue because you're not getting optimal energy. And no matter what diet you try or how much you restrict, you're just not seeing that metabolism activate or that body fat burn.
And now on the other end of the spectrum, those that are a candidate for low leptin might be individuals who come into a keto diet or are on any diet and have a low % body fat. Or like I said, you might actually burn out those levels over time if you only have, 5-10 pounds to lose. We can also see low leptin in individuals who run high stress or that kind of type A personality, go-getter, those who are doing chronic calorie restriction, or those who are intermittent fasting without those body fat reserves to feed off of.
Yes, so just as we said, leptin is that safety signal. If your leptin levels are too low, you'll likely be dealing with anxiety or a fight or flight surge, maybe even onset of panic attack, insomnia, or difficulty getting into a restful state. We also know that these individuals might have had the keto high or might have experienced that loss of appetite, but all of a sudden now they're getting hungry and they were fasting for 3 years from that window of 8 p.m. to noon, but now all of a sudden they're white knuckling their fast. I'm always telling clients to listen to your body first, and often we'll see that these individuals actually have to do some metabolic refeeding or adjusting their fasting window, eating a little bit more frequently, and upping the fat grams in their diet so that their body feels safe again and they get that leptin level elevated.
So for these individuals, sometimes less isn't more, and we need to break up with that restriction and fasting and tell your body that it's safe. One of the ways to do this is to make sure that you're consuming a quality, high protein and high fat breakfast within the first hour of rise. So this could be something like a good quality pasture raised cottage cheese, along with a good drizzle of olive oil to give you a little bit more fat to have gas in your tank. You can check out this video where we talk about carb cycling and how you can utilize this to reset your leptin levels as well as the leptin and carbohydrate connection.
Yes, and what I think is interesting as an overarching theme of high leptin or low leptin level is that stress connection. So regardless of where your leptin is at, remember that this hormone plays a role with satiety and safety. So we're going to want all people, whether they're high or low, to work on harnessing their stress response. You might consider this video here where we talk about 4-7-8 breath, which is a technique that has been shown to bring the body back into that parasympathetic space of regulation versus fight or flight mode. And then if you are someone with elevated leptin levels, we're going to want to adjust things further and actually work kind of counter of Becky's recommendation of if you're low. So if you have high leptin levels, we actually want to extend your fasting window and allow the body to go from that leptin resistance back into leptin sensitivity. It does this going through that autocatabolism, or basically the digestion of your own fat reserves when we are in a fasted state. We also, for these individuals, would want to lower the fat in the diet. We might liberate the carbs a little bit, and we would support for sure still a high protein approach on either end of the spectrum. But for those that have excessive leptin, we want them to use the deep reserves from their body and reduce the grams of fat in their diet.
Yes, and if those signs of leptin resistance or leptin elevation sound like you, we actually unpack this in an entire podcast episode where we go through a typical day of recommendation of what that low-fat keto might look like. So check it out here.
I think the big summary of today is to test, not guess. And if you don't have access to assessing your leptin levels, you can order a panel linked below at Ali Miller RD, and you'll get a customized email review with feedback of how you should adjust based on your status of metabolic health. If you enjoyed this video and learned something and are maybe going to eat a little bit more frequently or fast a little bit longer, we'd love to hear what you've learned and how you plan to apply the information.
Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the Naturally Nourished YouTube channel so you never miss one of our bi-weekly releases of all of these clinical pearls.
Jump in.
in the tank. Put it in the tank.